You hear the sounds from that confrontation. Authorities say that 18-year-old Jahara Malik stabbed Yahkeim Lollar at the apartment garage back in 2024. It happened in Miami, right near Northwest 6th Court and 61st Street. She was then sentenced to 17 years in prison last week after pleading guilty to this crime. Body cam video shows the moment when officers responded to the scene. Take a look.
Yeah, I had the knife, but
Were you guys arguing before that?
no, we was just over here fighting, and then
So you guys are arguing?
yes, and then well, we wasn't arguing, we was just like play fighting and stuff. And then that's when he was making me mad, and that's when I had the knife right here, and then he ended up running to it. But I'm not thinking because he already knew I had it. He was trying to get it from me, but he ended up running to it.
Malik was charged with manslaughter.
It was December 20th, 2024, 4 days before Christmas. Natalie Jean was home with her children. They were putting up the Christmas tree, a pink one, because her oldest daughter, Tamia, had waited until the last minute to buy it, and pink was what was left. Her son walked into the living room, took one look at it, and said, because he was always a jokester, "Pink tree, huh? Mom, pink tree." They laughed. They put on music, Mariah Carey, "We Belong Together." And Yahkeim came out of his room, singing along, not caring who heard him, just being himself in the middle of a regular, beautiful day. They danced. They ate. He went to his room. Before she went to bed, his mother asked him to take out the trash. He said, "Mom, I promise I'm going to do everything in the morning." Those were the last words Yahkeim Lollar ever said to his mother. He never saw morning. I want to ask you something before we go anywhere else in this story. Not about what happened in that parking garage. Not about the knife or the surveillance footage or the sentencing. Something simpler and more important than any of that. What does it cost a 17-year-old boy to tell his girlfriend the truth? Yahkeim Lollar told Jahara Malik the truth. 8 days before he died, he told her he didn't want to be in the relationship anymore. He was honest with her. His mother said later, on record, that it was precisely his honesty, his directness, his willingness to tell her the truth that she could not handle. 8 days later, he was dead. And the question that sits at the center of this entire case, the question that a courtroom full of grieving family members, a judge and a prosecutor all had to wrestle with, is the same one you are going to wrestle with for the rest of this video. Was it an accident? Let's get into it. Before we talk about what happened, we have to talk about who he was, because his name has been misspelled, mispronounced, and misreported across nearly every platform that covered this story. So let's set the record straight. His name was Yahkeim Lollar. His family and everyone who loved him called him Chemo. He was 17 years old, a junior at Miami Northwestern Senior High School in Miami, Florida. One of the most storied high school football programs in the state of Florida. He was a running back, a student, a straight A kid who, according to everyone who knew him, never bragged about a single thing he accomplished. His father, Darvid Lollar, remembered picking him up from Charles Drew Elementary School one day when Yahkeim was just 10 years old. The PE teacher pulled Darvid aside and told him, "This kid is something special. He runs faster than anyone out here. He jumps higher than anyone I have seen at this age. He is a natural athlete." Yahkeim had already won 3 Super Bowl MVPs in youth football by the time he was 10 years old. 3, and when he went to school the next day, he did not tell a single person. His father was his hero. His father was the best barber. His father could beat anyone in basketball if you listen to Chemo talk about it. He poured every ounce of his pride into the people he loved rather than into himself. At his funeral, held at the Haitian Evangelical Baptist Church of Miami. Mourners dressed in white and green, his favorite colors. A childhood friend stood up and said they had met on a football field at 3 years old. 3 years old, and the bond they built across those 14 years was the kind that does not have a name. He was a positive and influential person, one mourner said. He made life fun to be around. He was not selfish. He was caring, a straight A student, a football player, a boy who sang Mariah Carey out loud in his living room without embarrassment, a son who promised his mother he would take out the trash in the morning. That is who Yahkeim Lollar was. And that is who did not wake up on December 21st, 2024. Yahkeim and Jahara Malik were teenagers in an on-again, off-again relationship. Jahara was 17 years old at the time. By the accounts of people who knew her, she cared deeply about Yahkeim, or at least about what she believed the relationship was. Her family described her as someone from a household that valued faith, discipline, and respect. Her pastor, who had been counseling her since the tragedy, said in court that Jahara was not a violent or careless person. But here is what Yahkeim's mother told reporters on record without hesitation. She took my son's life because he was honest with her that he didn't want to be with her. And she, not realizing her actions, her behavior, and her entitlement, is the reason why he didn't want to be with her. 8 days before December 20th, Yahkeim had told Jahara he wanted out. That detail was not prominently featured in any of the early coverage of this case. It was buried in statements and court records. But it matters enormously because it answers the question that every person watching surveillance footage of two teenagers laughing in a stairwell asks themselves, why would this happen? This did not erupt from nowhere. There was a conversation 8 days earlier that one person in this relationship was not finished having. Let me walk you through what the cameras recorded. At 10:34 p.m., Jahara Malik is seen at the entrance of the apartment complex in Miami's Liberty City neighborhood. The complex on Northwest 6th Court near 61st Street where Yahkeim lived. She is with a friend. They are laughing. The friend is carrying bags. Two teenagers on a December evening doing what teenagers do. 7 minutes later, at 10:41 p.m., a second camera picks up Jahara and Yahkeim walking together into the stairwell of the parking garage. He is wearing a hoodie. She seems playful. They walk up the stairs together. 16 minutes pass. At 10:57 p.m., Yahkeim comes back into frame, and then Jahara runs toward him. Her purse drops to the ground. She runs toward him. 2 minutes later, she comes back into frame, alone, phone in her hands, dialing 911. Police arrive 6 to 7 minutes after that call. In between those timestamps, in those 16 minutes that no camera fully captured, Yahkeim Lollar was stabbed in the chest with a 4-inch blade. But here is what one camera did capture. Before the stabbing, in the stairwell, you can hear Yahkeim's voice. A detective testified about it in open court. And what you can hear clearly is Yahkeim saying, "Jahara, don't. Jahara, don't." Not laughing, not playing, not the voice of someone in the middle of horseplay, pleading. When Miami police officers arrived and spoke to Jahara in the parking garage that night, she gave them an explanation. She said they were fighting, horseplaying, that she had a knife in her purse because she couldn't find her pepper spray before getting into an Uber that night and grabbed the knife instead for protection. She said her phone was also in the purse. She said when she reached for the phone, she grabbed both the phone and the knife at the same time. And then, she said, Yahkeim ran into it. She said he already knew she had the knife. She said he was trying to get it from her, and he ran into it. She stayed at the scene. She wrapped his shirt around her hand and applied pressure to the wound. She called 911. She did not run. And then, speaking to the officer while Yahkeim was being worked on nearby, she said something that the prosecution would later play in court. The officer told her they were working on him. Just relax. And Jahara said, "I didn't need him to wake up. Let that sit. I didn't need him to wake up." The officer asked if she understood what was happening. She asked, "If he's alive, then what? Where do we go from there?" Those are not the words that come out of a person who is in shock from a tragic accident. Those are the words of someone already calculating what comes next. Jahara Malik was not charged immediately. In the weeks after December 20th, while Yahkeim's family planned his funeral, she was at home. She was granted a $50,000 bond. She was going to school. Yahkeim's mother, Natalie Jean, called that ankle monitor a slap in the face. His family did not wait quietly. They organized. They marched. They stood outside the Miami-Dade State Attorney's office and demanded that charges be filed. Natalie Jean stood in front of cameras and said, "My son is dead. Why am I fighting for justice for my son?" More than a month after the killing, the Miami-Dade Medical Examiner's Office ruled Yahkeim's death a homicide, and prosecutors filed charges. Jahara Malik, charged as an adult at 17, was arrested on January 28, 2025. The medical examiner's report is what ended the horseplay argument. Here is what it said. The knife, a pocket knife with a pink handle and a 4-inch blade, entered Yahkeim's chest at an angle described as 12 to 6. The blunt side of the blade at 12 o'clock. The sharp side at 6. Straight into the chest, slightly to the left. The wound depth was 10.1 centimeters, 3.976 inches, almost the full length of a 4-inch blade. It pierced his hoodie, his shirt, soft tissue. It fractured the third rib on his left side, and it pierced his heart. The prosecutor, Kristen Rodriguez, stood in court and said it plainly. That knife went into him with such force. It penetrated not only his hoodie, his shirt, his muscle, his fat. It clipped his rib and went directly into his heart. An accident is something without foresight, without the reasonable ability to prevent it. And this case screams foreseeability. Then came the demonstration that dismantled Jahara's story entirely. Jahara had told police she was holding the knife low, around waist level, when Yahkeim bumped into it. The prosecutor asked the detective to stand up and show the court exactly how Jahara demonstrated she was holding the knife. Then the prosecutor asked, "Where exactly is the stab wound on the victim?" "Higher, up in the chest, near the heart." Yahkeim was 5 feet 10, Jahara was 5 feet 6 or 7. For a wound at that height, at that angle, with that depth, the knife could not have been held low. It had to have been raised. It had to have been driven in. The amount of force required to fracture a rib and reach a heart through a hoodie and a shirt is not accidental force. That is the conclusion the medical examiner reached. That is the conclusion the judge reached. And it also came out during the hearing that this was not the first time Jahara had shown aggression toward Yahkeim. Jahara Malik pleaded guilty to manslaughter in March 2026 without a plea deal. She let the judge decide her fate on May 5th, 2026 at the Richard E. Gerstein Justice Building in downtown Miami. The sentencing hearing was held. The courtroom was packed. Dozens of Yahkeim's family members, classmates, and friends filled every seat and spilled into the hallway outside. Many wore shirts bearing his photo. 10 people delivered victim impact statements. The proceedings had to be paused multiple times. Twice, women left the courtroom in tears when the surveillance video played, the last footage of Yahkeim alive. The judge warned the gallery more than once that she would not allow the hearing to continue with commentary from the audience. Yahkeim's aunt, Zeldrina Beecham, stood up, looked directly at Jahara, and said, "It will always be a fact that you are a murderer. You are a demon seed that your parents brought into this world to bring suffering on everybody else. Shame on them." Yahkeim's father, Yahkeim Lollar Sr., told the court, "We feel as though she has been undercharged. We feel like the whole investigation was influenced from the jump." And Natalie Jean, the woman who was putting up a pink Christmas tree with her son hours before he was killed, stood before the judge and said, "That night, Jahara took my son's life. Nobody could save my son. She gave my son a death sentence." She also said something that no headline captured adequately. She said that because her son was 17 years old, exactly 17, it was fitting that Jahara would spend 17 years behind bars, a year for every year of her son's life. Jahara addressed the court in a black suit, holding back tears. She said, "I was reckless. That knife should have never been out. And because of that, a life was lost. I was wrong for what I did. The family wants me in prison, but I'm in my own prison for the rest of my life." She said Yahkeim was her best friend, her love. someone she could vent to about everything. She said she tried numerous times after the incident to reach out to his family, but was legally prohibited from doing so. She asked for forgiveness. She said she prays for closure. 9 people delivered character witness statements on Jahara's behalf. Her defense asked the judge to sentence her as a youthful offender, to place her in a boot camp program rather than adult prison. The state wanted 20 years plus 10 years probation. Yahkeim's family wanted the maximum. Judge Christine Hernandez had a decision that she said weighed heavily on her. She denied the defense's motion for downward departure. She did not believe the stabbing was unsophisticated. She did not believe it was an isolated incident of aggression. And though she believed Jahara was remorseful, remorse alone does not undo what the medical examiner's report described. She said, the amount of force required to inflict that wound was not accidental, she said. Your youth does not excuse the foreseeable consequences of the choices you made. The choices that you made affected the trajectory of all of their lives, the trajectory of your life as well as your family's. And then she sentenced Jahara Malik to 17 years in Florida State Prison, followed by 5 years of reporting probation, with one additional condition. Every December 20th, every single year, she is on probation. Jahara Malik must write a letter acknowledging what happened on that date and how it has affected her life. Every December 20th, the day she took Yahkeim's life, the day Nathalie Jean stopped being a mother to a son who was still alive. The day a pink Christmas tree became a before and after marker in a family's history. After the sentence was read, Jahara was handcuffed immediately. Her family surrounded her, some in tears. Her uncle, Gary Malik, told reporters, "Justice was not served for the defendant, my niece Jahara. She was a youthful offender, and I feel the court did not recognize that." Outside the courthouse, Nathalie Jean said, "My son can finally rest in peace knowing that justice was served. She was not walking out of that door. That's what matters." Jahara Malik's family is reportedly considering an appeal. There are things this story is asking us to sit with. Things that go beyond this courtroom in Miami. The first, a family had to protest outside a government building to get charges filed for their son's murder. Yahkeim Lollar was killed on December 20th. She was not charged until January 28th, more than a month later. A mother organized marches. She stood in front of cameras and asked why she had to fight for her own son's justice. That question deserves to live in this story, not be footnoted. In this country, how loudly a family is willing to grieve in public can determine whether anyone is held accountable at all. The second, the word horseplay did enormous damage in this case. It was the word Jahara used from the very first moment she spoke to police. And it shaped a month of public narrative around this case, softening what the medical examiner's report would later make undeniable. A 4-inch blade driven with enough force to fracture a rib and pierce a heart is not the result of roughhousing. Words matter in how we frame violence. And when we accept the framing of the person who caused it, we do a disservice to the person who can no longer speak for themselves. The third, Yahkeim Lollar told the truth. He told the girl he was with that he wanted to end the relationship. He was honest. His mother said that honesty, that directness, is what Jahara could not handle. And he paid for it with his life. That is a thing we need to say clearly. Telling someone the truth about where you stand in a relationship is not a provocation. It is not a reason. It is not a trigger that shifts responsibility. Whatever happened in that stairwell on December 20th, 2024, began 8 days before it, with a boy being honest, and ended with a mother putting up a Christmas tree alone. Yahkeim Lollar was 17 years old, a straight A student, a running back at Miami Northwestern Senior High School, a boy who won 3 youth football Super Bowl MVPs and never told anyone, a son whose father was his hero, a kid who sang Mariah Carey in the living room without a flicker of self-consciousness because he was comfortable enough in himself not to need an audience's approval. He told his mother he would take out the trash in the morning. He never got the morning. Jahara Malik is 18 years old. She will be 35 when she is released from prison if she serves the full sentence. She will write a letter every December 20th for the rest of her probation. Her family is considering an appeal. And Natalie Jean visits her son's grave after her night shifts. She goes before sunrise, in the quiet, the way a mother goes to the only place left where she can still be close to him. That is where this story lives now. Not in a courtroom, not in a sentence. In the space between a December night and every morning that came after it without him. Rest in peace, Yahkeim. Chemo, this is justice rewritten. We stay on every case until the truth is fully told. If this video moved you, subscribe, share it, and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. If you or someone you know is struggling, call or text 988. Free, confidential, 24 hours a day.